There you go. Welcome to the Rockstar Auction House channel. This is the first in a series of many, and I want to welcome one of my oldest and dearest friends, Mr. Paul Kramer. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on and talk about our favourite subject, music. Well, our favourite subject might be Tottenham Hotspur, but we'll talk about that another time. This is predominantly to discuss music, and I thought you'd be brilliant for this, Paul, because you've had such a great career in music. But one thing, I mean, I know I've known you for such a long time, but I don't know how where your sort of interest in music started, your first record you got, your gigs, and how did that all start? So let's go back to the beginning. You're a kid. What were you listening to at the time? What was influenced you in terms of music?
Well, I was born at a young age, Neil. So I go all the way back to the 60s, I suppose. But because I had a checkered education, I didn't have much musical input, although I did have an older sister who had her records, and she was into people like Rod Stewart and the Faces. But at
Were you
school,
listening to the records that she'd bought then at that time?
yeah, because I hadn't really carved my own niche, whatever, in music. So I was a sponge, you know. I was a blank canvas. So, but I do remember the first record that was ever bought for me would have been Downtown,
Oh,
Downtown,
Petula Clark.
Petula Clark.
Yeah.
And then I won't mention the next record. I remember Ray Stevens' The Streak, and then moving on to the Barron Knights. So my musical taste was pretty dodgy initially.
Yeah,
I'm not one of these people that say, "Oh yeah, the first record I ever bought was the Clash's first single."
Yeah.
But that's all to come later on. But when at school there were people, we had factions of people that were into Fleetwood Mac or Queen or whatever. And I remember the first gig I went to was with school friends, and it was at Hammy Apollo. Hammy Odeon, as we used to call it, sorry.
Yeah.
And it was Supertramp. And the support
And what year was that, Paul?
So that was 74, possibly 74.
Right, okay.
So and that was Supertramp, and they were supported by a young singer-songwriter who I had the pleasure of meeting only last year, whose name is Joan Armour Trading.
Oh wow!
She was the support, so she was
would have
just
been that would have been an A&M.
Yes, it was an A&M Bion or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was funny because when I met her, I said, "Oh, I saw you the first real gig I ever saw, and you were supporting Supertramp." And she went, "Yeah, that's right." And I said, you and you were playing all on your own?" She went, "No, I had a band with me." I went, "Did you?" Because I don't remember there being a band with you. And she said, "Well, actually, they did go off, and I did do 3 or 4 songs on my own." I said, "That's what I remember about."
Yeah.
How amazing to watch all this, energy coming out of one
So
person.
why did you and your friends decide to go to that particular gig?
Because I think Supertramp was just a band that were quite inoffensive and poppy, and they ticked a lot of boxes. And that was the band to go and see, I suppose, then. And it was an easy one to get to on the tube.
Right, which I'm going to ask you as well is where were you living at the time?
So I would have been living in North London, and I would have got on the Piccadilly line and just gone straight through to
Right. Okay. So gigs and music was you were surrounded by it? Were there lots of record shops around you?
Well, yeah. I'll come on to that though, because the next gig I saw was 10cc.
Oh,
and
right.
it was also at Hammy Apollo, Hammy Odeon. And that would have been around the same time. But then moving on, the next thing that happened was I was still at school, but I got a Saturday job in my local records shop, which is called Alex Strickland Records.
Right.
And Alex Strickland was a well-known face in the Cray era. And was friends with Sinatra, people like that. So it was all a bit weird. But that was just the local record shop in Southgate.
Right.
And I had a Saturday job there, which turned into a full-time job. Because I then basically, moving on, that was now 76. I left school halfway through my A levels.
Right. Same path as me seems to be so far.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just couldn't hack it. And
Yeah.
then punk came along.
Yeah.
So I got really into all the punk bands. So
Mm.
whether it be the Clash or well, what happened next was I went on tour with Stiff Little Fingers. So
Ah, right. So you know Jake, obviously.
oh yeah, I know Jake
Yeah.
very well. And he's still doing it, paying those
Yes.
tax bills every year.
When you say you went on tour, in what capacity?
So I was a roadie.
Oh, right. For the
And
Stiff Little Fingers.
yeah, so
I never knew that.
yeah. So what happened was, so I was a big fan around the 77 of the Tom Robinson band.
Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
go
I
to
know you knew Tom very well.
yeah, so I'd go to all the TRB gigs. And one gig I went to, Stiff Little Fingers with the tour support.
Yeah.
So I got to hang out with them. And then I said, oh, can I come on tour with you? I just basically said, can I come on tour with you? And they went, well, yeah, if you want, just be
Fantastic.
a gopher. And I got to do things, really sexy things like clean out the minibus, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, but it was it was the first time I ever slept shared a room with another guy on the road crew who had a habit of bringing women back to the room.
Oh,
So,
right. Okay.
and I was very young and naive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to just put the pillow over my head.
How
And
many dates would that have been?
so it was all over the UK. So it was about a dozen dates, I suppose.
Right.
And I remember we had friends. I had friends who came up to see them in one venue. I think it was in Malvern, up
Hmm.
in Worcestershire,
Yeah.
and they got arrested for some reason.
Right.
I think they had some jazz cigarettes on them or
Oh,
something.
right.
So yeah, that's what I was doing. So that was it. But by then, I had left the record shop, independent record shop, and gone to work for Our Price. So Our Price
Right.
had
So
five
that's where
shops.
so you started in retail and then you're sort of still in the retail game. So that's where that
Yeah,
started.
yeah. So I'm in the retail game, loving all this new music, and
Yeah.
basically going up to the Hope and Anchor every night, watching Joe Jackson, Elvis Costello, Fishes,
Yeah. Fantastic.
and it was just a lovely, the Piranhas, whoever. It was just every night there was something good on,
Yeah.
and there was some just great gigs. But I went to I went on tour with yeah. So I went on tour with Stiff Little Fingers. I was working at Our Price. I took 2 weeks off to go and do that. Went back
Hmm.
to Our Price after
Right.
the end of it all. And then I was at Our Price between 78 and 84. And they had 4 or 5 shops when I started there. They had 220 or something when I
I
left.
did.
So I
Yeah.
worked my way up really quickly. I was the youngest employee
Right.
at the time, but I worked my way up through the ranks to assistant manager, manager. And then I was manager of Tottenham Road and Charing Cross Road,
Oh,
this one
wow.
and that one,
Right. I didn't
Brett
know that.
Cross, whatever. So
Right.
I had a great time working at Our
Yeah.
Price. It was my favorite job ever.
Yeah.
It's just it's the coolest job in the world. I remember one day Michael Caine walked in with Janet Street Porter, and they bought this
Wow.
Bando Ballet album, True.
Right.
So that's one of my record shop um, reminiscences of days gone by.
Around that time, then, when you were in that store, can you remember some of the big releases that were coming out? Do you remember
Mm.
some of the big sort of in-store displays and
But
things that were
it was
happening
when
around the time?
Blondie were first cracking it
Yeah.
through. So that's 78,
Yeah.
79.
Yeah.
So it was all the kind of the biggest band I remember around that time. 79 would have been. I'm not sure about my dates, but when Joy Division released Unknown Pleasures,
Right.
and when Ian Curtis died, which today I think would have been his 68th birthday or something,
Wow.
he'd
Wow.
lived. So
Yeah.
that's just quite a coincidence. So yeah, I remember Joy Division just being a huge album.
Yeah.
The other album I remember being huge was couple of years later, in 1981.
Yeah.
I think it was 81, when John Lennon got shot.
Oh, crikey. Yes, of
Because
course. Yeah.
until then, his album had stiffed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It
we had
wasn't doing very
boxes.
well at all, was it?
Yeah, we had returns just sitting, waiting to go back.
Wow. Back to
Boxes and
EMI.
boxes of them. Uh, EMI,
Was it EMI, wasn't it? Yeah.
or was it Warner's? I can't remember. I think it must have been EMI.
Must have been, surely.
Whichever. No, do you know what? I think it might have been Warner's.
Really? Okay.
But yeah, for some reason, Double Fantasy. That was the album, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Yeah.
And it totally stiffed, you know. And then, when he got shot that day, and then for the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there were just queues going out of it. It was like the precursor to when Live Aid happened and they did
Yeah,
Sandals in the Bin.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, that was interesting because we then sold all that dead stock that would have been sent back, you know. So
Because at that sort of time, there was, you know, singles were obviously big. They were selling very well.
yeah,
Albums were doing very well. There wasn't, you know, the charts were sort of based on. There would have been the old BMRB uh,
yeah.
Market Research Bureau book, wasn't it?
I
The
used to
book.
do a lot of book filling. Put it
Yes,
that
there was
way.
a book that you had that you
Yeah,
filled in every time you sold a record, and for anybody that's listening, that's how the charts were made up. They'd go and collect the books, or they'd ring. I think you ring through what
it
was
was a
on.
total farce. So what would happen? Yeah, you'd have reps coming in all day long, just saying, "This is my priority. Can you put a
Yeah,
few ticks in?" You know, and that's what we did. And
yeah.
you know, it was just kept one cancelling out the other all the time.
But there were some records though at the time that we were talking in the office the other day. There were records around that time that were genuinely great records, and then there were this you know, the UK had this capacity to purchase the most ridiculous pop novelty records and make them number one. Joe Dolce, "Shut Up Your Face," which famously kept Ultravox's Vienna off the charts, and you know, all sorts of nonsense.
Look at Mr. Blobby. You know,
Oh yeah,
a
yeah,
crime against humanity.
yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think that was
But
a
that's what the public used to do. They used to buy. I mean, I remember sort of, you know, when I was young, obviously it was queuing up, and you could buy in my local, you could buy records from various sort of stores around. You know, Woolworths was one of them. Boots,
Yeah, Boots had
Boots.
a record section.
We had a record shop in.
Woolworths was my main. Well, later on, Woolworths my
Yeah.
competition when I
So
went into.
after you did that, you then how did track records come around?
So after being at Alprice for 5 years, I then realised I could do this
Hmm.
for myself, and uh, managed to persuade another work colleague that we should set up our own shop. So I
Yeah.
went looking for a site and found what turned out to be the perfect site in Boreham Wood in Hertfordshire. So that was in 1985, and that opened 85 April. And around the same time as that opened, there was a new soap opera just going into production round the corner
Was.
at the studios.
Ooh.
And that was a great asset to have because all the
Well,
cast.
that was the time I met you. It was 85, 86 was the time I met you.
Bloody hell, you've known me a long time.
And I
40
didn't
years.
realize, yeah, I didn't realize that the you know, when of course when I went in that store, I just assumed the store you'd been around for a long, long time, but I didn't realize. But you had more than one store, didn't you?
Yeah, we had, in the end, there was three. So there
That's
was
right.
one
Yeah.
in Chesham, Bucks, and there was another one in Eastcote
Yeah.
near
East
Pinner.
Coast. That's right. I remember.
But yeah, so I had a partner called Mike. I don't know whatever became of him really. We haven't spoken for a good 20 years.
Yeah.
So I that was in '85, and of course, what happened next was I got to be chosen to supply the music for EastEnders. Now,
Yes. I remember. I was
EastEnders
going to
was
ask you about that. Yeah.
right. So EastEnders was filming 6 weeks in advance. So I had to choose what was going to be a hit 6 weeks down the line.
Right.
But all I did was choose all my favorite artists. So there'd be people like Martin Stevenson and the Dainties, and lots of Deacon Blue.
We were going to come on to Deacon Blue because for me, Deacon. Every time I think of Deacon Blue, I think of Paul Kramer, and the reason for that is you had such a passion for them, and I just remember we either had conversations on the phone or you always spoke about Deacon Blue.
This is just my 7-inch Deacon Blue collection.
There
There's a
you
lot
go.
more. There's a lot
There
more.
you go. But you championed them right from the off, and I must admit I loved Chocolate Girl and a couple of the other songs right at the very beginning.
Dignity.
Yeah, I remember thinking that was, you know,
Loaded.
something special here. Yeah,
They would. So what happened with Deacon Blue was I was supplying their music to EastEnders, right? And before they had a hit, really, and I went to see them, and they were supporting someone at Ulu. I can't think who it was. I remember Janice Long was there. Who was it? Anyway, they were supporting. So I got to meet them. That was the first time I got to meet them, and I just said, "Oh hi, I'm Paul Kramer. I love you, your band, your music, and I've been supplying your music to EastEnders." And they went, "Oh, you're the guy." Yeah, until we were heard on EastEnders, our family didn't believe we were famous or that we were in a band or we were doing any good. Or and I went, Oh, there you go. That's the power of TV.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and
Power of
then
TV and the power of radio at the time as well.
and yeah, because it just they were signed by a guy called Gordon Charlton, who obviously had good ears at the time.
Well, we'll come on to Gordon in a minute because I've met up with Gordon not very long ago, probably about 5, 6 weeks ago. We had dinner one night.
oh, on an airplane.
No, he was about to go on one, but then he texted me while I was in LA and said, "Where are you?" And I went, "I'm in LA." And he said, "How long are you there for?" And I said, "Well, not long." And he said, "Oh no, he was on the way over as I was leaving."
Oh,
Yeah, so we're due to meet up again soon.
oh, great. Okay, so yeah, so he signed them. John Kelly produced the album, and that actually remains my favorite debut album of all time.
Brilliant.
So
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So you've got those sort of things that are really memorable for you. Is that sort of being able to sort of around that time? I mean, for me, that sort of mid to late 80s produced some amazing sort of bands and music. One of my favorites would have been Talk Talk, Spirit of Eden, and there was a few other bands as well. But
Prefab
that sort of
Sprout,
the sort of
Aztec Camera.
yeah, there were some fantastic records around at the time. A lot of it's as well. Some of the stuff that particularly with regard to the stores, it became quite important at that time to get a record into the 40 because once it got into the 40, it got a life of its own. So the attention was on the stores in terms of making sure that that's where your front end was made, and then you could once you've got that record going, top of the pops, life of its own, and the record took off.
Yeah,
We had the same with a on Virgin with Danny Wilson, Mary's Prayer. In fact, we tried
of
three
course.
times with that, and eventually it was a massive hit.
Yeah,
Uh, and I know you love that band as well. And
yeah.
again, Scottish band, very very good soul singers.
I love all Scottish
Love
bands.
Scottish band, yeah,
There's something
absolutely.
about Scottish musicians.
Yeah, there was a lot of it, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Texas, obviously.
Mm.
There was some really, really good, and obviously Simple Minds, who I saw recently. But when sort of around that time and coming away from Track Records and into your next venture, so Tracks was bought by R Price. Is that right?
No, so what happened with Tracks was, so I was there 85 to 2000, and then in 2000, so when I started, there was no such thing as CDs or whatever,
No.
or
No.
or big chain supermarkets stocking CDs
Yeah,
at
of course. Yeah,
discounted prices that were basically dealer price. I
yeah.
mean, many of the time I bought more records from Tesco's than I would do from EMI or Warner's or
Really, yeah,
whoever,
because it was so
because it
cheap.
was
Yeah.
cheaper to do so. But what happened was I was by 2000, having been there 15 years, I bought the freehold 5 years previously,
Mm.
and then Greg's the Bakers came in and
Ah,
made
right.
me some dough.
But
And
had our price offered to take it over at some point?
I think they was always talking about maybe moving that to
Right,
Bournemouth,
right,
but they never. I don't think it was no, because by then their expansion had kind of stopped because they'd been buying out chains like
right,
Harlequin,
right.
Sam Goody, yeah, they lost their way totally. Our price got too big, basically.
Right. So you've come out of Tracks. The business has been bought by Greg's. They're selling sandwiches instead.
Yeah.
Um, you suddenly you've got a little bit of a change of career. What can you
Yeah.
remember around that time about how you felt and what your next moves were going to be? Because I know where you went, which will come
So,
on
so
to.
you know that I went to work for Jonathan King. That's what
Yes,
I did
yeah.
next.
So it's the
Yeah.
tip sheet and then the
Yeah.
hit sheet, which
So I'd
showed
always been a
different roads.
subscriber to the Tip Sheet, which was an
Yep,
industry taste-making magazine,
yep,
and it was a great magazine.
yep.
But within a month of me being there, still having not met the great JK, uh, um, I I did eventually meet him, and the first words he said to me were, "You might want to edit this out," but the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, hello, Kramer. I suck, but I don't swallow." And I just went, "Sorry." I think I'm a bit too old for you.
Yeah,
But TMI, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then within 2 or 3 months of me being at the tip sheet, he was arrested
yeah.
and subsequently tried. And we were told we weren't allowed to go to the court case, but
Right.
I was, my curiosity got the better of me. And I did go along to the Old Bailey when he was being sentenced, and it was pretty horrific. I
Mm,
mean, some of the things he did, some of the things he didn't do,
mm.
and there was a lot of nonsense people come forward that actually they
Yeah, no,
met him but wanted to try and get compensation. You know, it was just,
yeah,
it just wasn't nice.
got negativity.
And then he went to live in the big house.
Yeah,
So his magazine, The Tip Sheet, basically stopped overnight.
yeah,
They tried to carry it on, but I went to all the labels and the MDs of all the record companies. So I went and had meetings with people like David Joseph,
hmm
uh, Paul Conroy, and people like
yeah,
that. And they all said to me, "Look, we can't support him anymore. We can't support the magazine.
yeah,
Our shareholders won't allow that because it'll make us look bad."
yeah.
And
Paul Conroy at Virgin,
Virgin,
which had
yeah,
become bought by EMI at the time.
yeah,
So
and
big
they,
push,
you know, yeah, and they were all friends. So Tony Wadsworth was
yeah,
another one I went to see. I mean, I went to Rob Stringer, Paul Berger, whoever. So, and when I went to see them all, they went, "Look, if you can start something and rebrand it,
yeah,
we'll support you instead." And I went,
yeah.
"Okay, let's do that." And that's how the Tip Sheet started, or the
Brilliant.
Tip Sheet as they used to call it. But
Yes, it was the hit sheet, wasn't it, for the
the Hit
record?
Sheet, and that was in 2002, and that went on till 2014.
So while you're at the hit sheet, you put on some nights. I remember those nights up
I
in
was promoting
in,
nights at the Cobden Club, yeah.
in the
So they
Cobblers.
was,
Yeah,
I was doing
yeah. There was quite a few
showcases.
really good nights on there, and you remember some of the acts on there. But tell me one of the sort of the greatest sort of acts that came out of that.
Well, there were a few. I mean, Jason Mraz came along and played one of my nights, which
Yeah.
was great. Chris Divot played my night. Narina Palo played my night. You know, she was amazing as always. Then acts that came along were the Ting Tings.
Hmm.
Before they were the Ting Tings, came
Yeah.
along.
Okay.
Um, um, and there was people like Tom McRae. My passion is singer songwriters, so
Yes, I
yeah,
know. Yeah, I was going
I'd
to come
always
on
get
to that.
behind. Yeah, so Tom McRae, Tom Baxter,
Yeah.
and then there was, I kind of delved into a bit of management as well, and I was managing a girl called Rumer. Um, I mean, subsequently she had 7 more managers before she became successful.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
she was tricky, um, to put it mildly, but
Yeah.
you know, a great songwriter with a great voice. And
You obviously still had an absolute passion for it then, because to be able to sort of go around all the record companies and put something together and say, look, I'm passionate about new music, and I know that your passion was singer songwriters as well, and
mm,
to actually then put an event on every week, and encouraging people to come along and see new acts and support new acts, gave you probably an insight into sort of certain types of music and how people were looking at it that lots of people didn't have, and it probably put you in an A&R sense in somewhere where lots of people weren't at that
yeah,
time.
I think I had a head start because I had
Yeah,
the magazine to back me up. So
yeah,
it was the two things running hand in hand. And you'd write about someone in the magazine and then say, but they're playing at my night next week. Come along and check them out. They're
yeah,
unsigned. They're
yeah.
available for publishing, whatever. I mean, there was hundreds came through that way over the course of those 12 years. Uh, Obviously, I've now managed to forget who the biggest ones were, but I remember people like Jamie Cullum came and played as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
and there was bands like Goldspot, who you won't remember, but they were just a great band,
yeah, yeah,
American band, and,
yeah,
no one knew who they were, but
yeah,
and they should have been huge. There's always bands that should have been huge that
yeah,
for
of
some reason
course,
or
yeah,
another don't become
yeah.
huge. But I remember, what was I going to say? I was going to say something quite profound, and now let me just think what it was that I was going to tell you. Um, Bands that came through. You're gonna have to pause
Okay, come on.
because I've lost my thread.
No, no. But around that time, you're in constant contact with the labels. You're
Oh
still
yeah,
doing
that's it.
things.
So yeah,
But I noticed at the time as well that was around the time that the emphasis on the singles chart would have been overloaded in terms of CD singles. They were virtually giving them away at the retail level, and therefore, but they were still using them now as loss leaders to support albums.
yeah,
But it's when people had these MP3 things, it started to, that some of the money started to pull back, didn't it?
yeah. But I need to remind you because you were at the cutting edge of this major band that came through late 90s. Uh, I think they were called the Spice Girls.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and but I remember their first single, "Wannabe," which obviously went on to be the biggest record of the year. When it
Mm.
was sold into me at retail, was a buy one get two free.
Mm.
So you only paid for one out of each free copy. So it's one in three, yeah, or it might have been buy one get three free. So all I remember was it paid for my summer holiday. So thank you for
Yeah, yeah.
that.
They were very bullish at the time. I seem to remember a lot of the management were very bullish about charting the records, and it became the biggest deal. Was it's like it didn't matter what we had to do. We had to get that records in the charts because the album was the thing. And of course, along the way, whereas before you'd got people coming into the store buying formats, we are talking about earlier on where when you
Picture discs.
got your picture discs and people coming in by different formats. Now that we've flooded a little bit to them, we got a bit too many. We had stories of HMV, I know, saying no, we're not taking free copies unless they're on the playlist. That sort of thing. So that it became a little bit more difficult to even get a record in store. But then this MP3 thing comes along where people are downloading it and getting it for free, and suddenly the money squeezed a bit and things start to dry up a little bit. What happened to the end of the hit sheet? How did that all come
So the issue, I just think I ran out of steam. I mean, I did it for
Yeah,
12 years and I wasn't making much money doing it. I was having a great time because
yeah,
I've been, going out to South by Southwest every year and
yeah,
in Austin, Texas, and going to the CMJs in New York and having a great time. And it was just a fun time to be in the industry and be accepted as being someone who actually walk the walk and talk the talk.
yeah.
I managed to upset people as well, obviously, but that's because I was always honest, and that
Well,
was
no,
our.
you were brutally honest, but you were extremely passionate about things. I mean, I think you got. I remember you getting involved with Warner's and Rhino in A&R capacities, and
So yes, so after the hit sheet,
people respect it. I think
yeah.
your opinions in an A&R
Well,
point.
I'll tell you some stories now. Then, so the first gig that Jack Savaretti ever played was for
Yep,
me at a
yep.
hit sheet night. Okay, didn't even have a guitar with him.
Wow,
And Tom McRae was playing the same night, so Tom lent him his guitar. And Tom bumped into Jack at the Ivors last month and reminded him of that
wow.
because Tom said, you've kind of gone through the stratosphere. I'm driving back down the M4 tonight in a battered old van.
Yeah.
But that's how it works.
Well, they took Jack Savaretti took a long time.
Yeah, and he was when I took because I had A&R jobs at Warner's.
Yep,
I did some scouting for The Voice
yep.
for David Joseph at Universal. I put Bo Bruce into that's a whole chapter on its own. Putting Bo Bruce into The Voice, where she did finish second.
Yeah,
And then had a top 10 album as a result.
yeah.
And I think she's still the only one to this day that's been on The Voice and has subsequently had a top 10 album. So,
Wow.
so that was good. But she was managed by Matt Thomas, if you remember Matt, who was
I know Matt. Yeah, I do know Matt.
Yeah. So that was putting Bo. Yeah. So I had an A&R gig with Warner Rhino, which was Dan Chalmers was my boss as such.
Yeah.
I was just a freelance, but it was probably the wrong label because when I took in Jack Savaretti to be signed to Warner Rhino, it was knocked back because he was just a poor man's Paolo Nutini. So it's like, wow, okay, but we're going to go and sign this guy instead, Joey from Essex. It's like, what are you doing? That's not enough. What's that got to do with music? And they go, no, but he's got high profile and he's got clicks and stats and whatever. So
that became the driving force, didn't it?
Yeah.
Behind behind signings, it eventually became, what have you got with you? What have you got to bring to the party, rather than go back to, which I know where you would have come from, which is the song, starting of the song and the the very basic.
It's good enough. It's good enough. The Lottery Winners were another band who were great, another overnight success. It's taken 10 years. When I took them in, Louis Bloom, oh, they look terrible. I said, so when you're listening on the radio, you can tell how they look. Because the songs are just genius.
Yeah.
What's it matter? And now they look great anyway. They basically sort themselves out. But that was another example. Another one was Louis Capaldi, where I was just basically told, well, what are his stats? When he's just starting out, but getting there early because he's going to be the biggest artist in the next 5 years. I mean, maybe after Sheeran and Adele, but biggest new artist.
Yeah.
And so it turned out. But
absolutely,
it was just like, well, his stats aren't good enough. Well, yeah, that's your job. You're the label. No, we
Yeah.
don't do that anymore. You have to build them to the level where we know that they're going to fly, and we'll just cream it off. So it's like, So yeah.
What would you say then, given that you're, going back to, helping Deacon Blue, you know,
Mm.
the hit sheet where you just every week where you would have someone as well, was it every week or is it every month?
It was fortnightly, but I have
Oh,
to
no,
tell you,
right.
in 2006, I featured a song that is still in the charts to this day. So I'm talking about 18 years later.
Wow.
Can
Which
you
one's
guess
that?
what that song might be? Should I tell you?
You might as well, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it was a song called Mr. Brightside by the Killers.
Oh my God.
They were on Lizard King at the time.
Right.
So it was before they
Wow.
signed to wherever they signed to, whichever Universal
Yeah.
label. I can't remember now
So,
where they went.
but given that you've been involved in all that, what would be your proudest moment, you think, in terms of who you've been involved with, or who you've sort of helped give a little leg up to at some point?
God, there's so many. Ah, I don't
The one
know.
that stands out in
Well,
particular?
there's the ones that got away
Yeah, yeah,
that should have been huge and weren't for whatever reason.
yeah.
You
Do they stand
know,
out more for you because you had more? If you like, there was a great sense of passion, and that nobody saw it quite the way you did. Would that stand out more for you? You
yeah,
think?
I mean, there's a band called I Am Arrows who had a
I
most
remember them.
amazing album came out on
Yeah,
one of the Universal labels. Um, it must be getting on for 10 years ago,
mm,
probably, and it just had no traction, but it was a perfect album for anyone who likes the Beatles or Crowded House or just good pop music, and that's what it was.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, the drummer Andy Burrows he was in Razorlight previously.
Right,
He's also in We Are Scientists, and he's also got his own thing going on with Tom Smith,
right.
who's from the Editors.
Yeah, yeah,
So he's done well, but it's just that band should have been huge, and I was
yeah,
disappointed that no one really bought into it.
yeah,
Um, but my proudest moments, I don't know. I suppose Rumor having a an album that sold 500,000 copies, it
yeah.
was quite satisfying for various reasons.
Yes,
Um, uh, but yeah, but my favorite band of all, who who that is, if I put Deacon Blue to one side, another Scottish band,
yes.
the Blue Nile.
Well, the Blue Nile, yes. Well,
The
we
Blue
had
Nile were
we
the
had
world's,
Paul's brother Murray work with us at V2, uh,
yes, lovely Murray
and
Buchanan.
but the Blue Nile are. I mean, I put them on today, and I just love everything that they do. They're just amazing. Absolutely,
Yeah,
what a great act. But yeah, another really soulful Scottish band. Brilliant.
yeah, and Paul Buchanan, the lead singer, is the nicest man in the world. So
Ah, right. Well, I haven't met him, and that doesn't surprise me though. You sing songs like that. You'd hope he would be.
yeah, and Murray's a nice guy, so
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
it's
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
genes. But yeah, Paul is just yeah, he's astonishing. So that was a proud moment for me. I got given a disc when they sold. They had a top 10 album with Peace at Last, which I think was their fourth album.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but my favorite album is Hats, which is the second album. So it's not it's not their debut album, so that has to
No,
still go to Deacon Blue, Raintown. But my favorite album of all time would be if I was on a desert island, I would take Hats with me
you
as
take hats,
my
right.
album. And
And your favorite single of all time would be?
oh God, I don't know. I
Or
don't.
if you put together a few, what would you if you put together a few singles and a few albums, is there any particular that you think?
It's like asking me who's my favorite child. I
Yeah.
can't tell you who my favorite.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
what I'd say. Pick two or three together then.
yeah, I'd have to go with Nina Simone, Baltimore, or
Yeah.
My Baby Just Cares for Me, or Tom Waits, In the Neighborhood.
Right. Fantastic.
Uh,
Singer-songwriters, obviously, great singers, great
yeah, I
songwriters.
mean, I've got so many favorite singles.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I should put a list together, really,
You should do. You
or it's
should.
too late.
Yes, exactly. Well, look, I'm gonna wrap that up now. But that was absolutely fantastic. It's so
Oh,
lovely to speak to you.
okay. So we're up to
Yeah.
present day, yeah. So I'm kind of looking for work.
Well, yeah, Yeah, I mean, this is a thing. So you've still got a passion. You've still got something to do, and I think that there's still, there is still room for people like you that've got passion. So if you are an aspiring singer songwriter and you want to know, you know, give some sort of leg up or how
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
along. This
yeah.
guy's the guys to talk to.
Check out a band called the Lemon Twigs. They're great.
Yep.
And
When you, I
yeah.
know I've been out in the music industry for a little while, but we were at Fate at the weekend. I went with my daughter and my mum's partner, and there was some kid, and it was innocuous. He was just listening in the background, and he was doing, you know, cover versions, and I sort of leant over my shoulder and had a good look at him, and you know, this kid, yeah, he said it, I didn't said it. He wasn't the most attractive kid, but that didn't matter. There's something about him, and he started to play Purple Rain by Prince. And I turned to my daughter and Harry and I said, if he pulls this one off, I said, that is a brave move. If you want to start, you know, attacking
Yeah.
that song and singing
Don't
that.
touch the classics. Yeah.
Well, he did, and wow, he was fantastic.
Oh
So
wow.
I think the guy's
Send me
name
his
is
name.
Jack Mason.
Oh, okay. Jack
Jack
Mason.
Mason, and he's been on Britain's Got a Talent or one of the pop superstar things, and he was told about his appearance, and I just thought, do you know what? It didn't matter at all, because you go back to, we're talking about Lewis Capaldi or Ed Sheeran. You know, they're not the archetype of what we would see when we were brought up as pop star looks, but actually they are now. That's what
Well,
pop stars look
look
like.
at Ed Sheeran. He's not
Yeah.
exactly,
No,
Mr.
absolutely.
Handsome.
But he looks like a pop star. He's complete, and this
Mm.
kid is exactly the same. But
Hmm.
he plays guitar. He did the lead, you know, Prince's Purple Rain, which was, of course, was done by Wendy Melvoin, Wendy and Lisa, and he played that. And I thought, you know what, fair play to you if you're going to attack that. And then he did Robbie Williams' Angels. So I don't know what it'd be like with his own stuff. I think he might have done a couple of them. But he
Right.
had held everyone's attention for quite a while, and I think, you know what, that was, and the old part of me came out as I went looking around to see if I could find a manager or someone to manage him. And I went online and had a look, and he's already got managed, which is fair play. But there was a little bit of me that said, "Oh, I wonder if I could, you know."
That's great. You've still got that. Yeah. And you never
Yeah,
know. You never
passion,
know.
exactly. You don't know. You don't know. We're still young. We're still young, and that's the most
Still,
important
my
thing.
ears are still 17. But yeah, so I've got more stories about management. So I'll save that for another day.
Save that for another time. We'll do a round two. I want to
Um,
keep this one into sort of 40. It's about 50 minutes at the moment, 45
oh
minutes.
God, sorry. I didn't realize it was going for so long.
That's right. No, that's good.
Look
It's
for
good.
England. It's
It was lovely
okay.
to talk to you. I'm going to mention the website, which is rockstarauctionhouse.com. Go on that and have a look at what we've got on there, some items on there. We also, if you want to get in touch, it's hello at rockstarauctionhouse.co.uk. So it's hello at rockstarauctionhouse.co.uk for the email, and rockstarauctionhouse.com, all one word, for the website. But lovely to talk to you. We're going to do a round two because we've got to delve into the management. We've got lots more to talk about. But thank you so much, Paul. Brilliant. I'm gonna cut this now, he says.
Thank you very much, Neil. It's been a pleasure.